Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Amplify Horse Racing Podcast. I am Annise Montplaisir, the Executive Director of Amplify Horse Racing, joined by my amazing co-host, Kaitlin Christopherson, the CEO of GSS, the marketing agency. And today is going to be a really cool episode because rather than bringing on a separate guest, we are going to be the guests for today. And Kaitlin and I are going to dive into kind of a little interview with each other. Our audience, since the podcast started, has grown significantly, which is amazing. But that also means that we probably have a lot of new listeners and viewers out there that don't know as much about mine and Kaitlin's stories and how we got to this point in our careers and even what our own day-to-day jobs are like. So today we're going to dive into what our backgrounds were with horses, how racing came into the picture, what we do as part of our work separate from the podcast, and then a really cool experience coming up where you guys will actually be able to potentially meet Kaitlin and the Amplify Horse Racing team. So Kaitlin, lovely to see you. Any horsey updates?
I'm so excited.
Yeah, this is going to be great. What's going on in your horsey life right now? Any other shows?
No, I am getting ready for our, of course, racing and the marketing agency's busy season. So that means some upcoming trips to Lexington and Saratoga. So yeah, it's time to get to work and start hopefully meeting some of our listeners this year.
That's awesome. I love that.
It's been 3 years, I believe, of us doing this, and I think we might have introduced ourselves on our first episode, but I'm not sure to this point how much people know or follow us.
I just remember that I think the first episode touched on "'Tis the Law." And it's really funny. We had recommended at a recent college scholarship day experience that we're at, that some of the students that we were engaging with go back and listen to the podcast. Or I hadn't really specified, go back to the very beginning, but we had a couple people dive into the very, very beginning of the podcast, which makes me kind of feel like, oh, I don't know if I want you to listen
I'm
to those.
I'm not sure if I even have if I have the stomach to do that, to go back and listen to our first few episodes. But no, they've all been wonderful. I'm really excited for this, though.
Yeah, I am too. And to share with the audience, Kaitlin mentioned that it is busy season in the world of horse racing and media and nonprofits.
It's Derby week as we're recording right now.
Yes. Today it is the Monday of Derby week. So
wow.
It is, everybody is going all out and we're pumped and excited. And there's so much going on that it's important to carve out this time to share with you guys. So Kaitlin, I think we should start with you because I remember when we met in 2017 at the Keeneland November sale. And you have such a kind face and this warmth to you when people meet you. So I remember having so much fun first meeting you and chatting and thinking, wow, she's so cool. And now it's come full circle to us actually working together. So, but as we were talking about before we started recording, I actually don't even remember how you got into horses or what your early story was. To get you into the thoroughbred industry. So where did horses come into your life to begin with?
Oh my goodness, what a journey it has been. The easy answer is I don't know. But it's something that, to be honest, I don't know. It's just always been within me. My family is not horsey at all to this day. Just getting my mom to come to a show is like a big accomplishment. And she thinks the new mare I'm riding is just massive, which is funny. I mean, she is big.
She is. And you're also not a tall
That's
human.
True, yes. Yeah.
So the two of you together, she looks really big.
But I have a picture of me, and I have several of these pictures. I might have to dig some of them out for this episode. But I have several pictures of my mom setting me on a pony or a horse from the time I'm like 6 months old. You know, we must have gone to, I think, the county fair, maybe like a friend's birthday who had a pony ride or something like that. And that's, I mean, I was hooked, like literally. So it's kind of in my subconscious, I think, because I never had a moment where I was just like, oh, I love horses. It's just always been there. So I started working as soon as I could. I think I was like 6 years old, volunteering at a local stable, giving pony rides and taking care of the ponies. And after a few years of doing that, my dad relented and he got me my first horse. He was a leopard Appaloosa, and he was like a 3 or 4, very green, you know, pulled right out of the pasture from one of my dad's like friends. And it's like, yeah, here, let this 8-year-old who, you know, doesn't have a ton of experience, like take this on. And yeah, from there, you know, I found 4-H, and then I found competing through 4-H, and I was hooked on the competing. I've always been and still am an incredibly competitive person. So being able to work towards a goal with your horse and then get out there and compete and show, you know, what you can accomplish together was, it was like the ultimate for me. And obviously now in my adult life, I still spend, or I've recently gotten back to spending as much time as possible as I can at horse shows. So I took a little break from horses when I went to college. Again, you know, my parents, nobody in my family had ever even had a horse. So to wrap your head around the expenses and what it takes to take care of one of those animals, it was difficult for my family. So I went to college, I, you know, separated from my horses, and I went to college with the understanding that I would always get a job, would support the horse lifestyle. And when I graduated from college and I had the opportunity to move to Lexington, I had never been to Kentucky, but I immediately thought light bulb, horses, and marketing. And I thought, I bet they have some jobs there that would combine horses and marketing. And yeah, I got up there, and now I'm CEO of GSS, the marketing agency.
Wait, did you have a job lined up before you moved, or you moved
No.
and then you found a job?
No, I moved and I was working like several part-time jobs. And then my first, and I was also doing a few things. I was like trying to get back into riding, but didn't really have the finances. So it was just kind of taking, you know, lessons here and there, doing a little reaching out to some horse like trade publications and saying, oh, can I do some blogging and things like that for you? And then my first foray into the thoroughbreds was Kerry Cawthon of 4-Star Sales. He offered me a position. Well, it wasn't a position. It was like a one-day thing to come to the Fasig-Tipton October sale and hand out the updates. And I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know what to wear. And that was it. And then I started working for Kerry.
Wait, but had you been to a sale before, or that was literally your first time rocking up?
My first time. I showed up in like workout clothes because I just had no idea. And I'd been so far removed from the barn environment for so long that, you know, I was truly like at that point in my life, that was probably the least horse girl I've ever been. So I was like, I don't know, I'll just wear something, you know, active and sneakers.
Honestly, though, that's not off base. Like, you want to be able to be pretty mobile and have comfortable shoes because you're going to be on your feet all day. So slap a logoed hat on your head and you're pretty much good to go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I started bugging Kerry. Oh my gosh, I love this. You know, can I do this? Every sale you have, can I do it? And while I was doing that, I started, you know, working on my resume, applying to full-time jobs in the area. And Kerry and a family friend over, or somebody that we knew in Keeneland, actually sent my resume over at one point to Elliot Walton at WinStar Farm. And I interviewed there 3 times. I had no idea what I was doing or getting myself into. I truly did not know the difference at that point between a maiden special weight and a grade 1. I was that new, but Elliot liked my ideas and liked the enthusiasm that I was bringing to the role. And yeah.
Wow. It's so funny. Going back to the whole pony ride thing, the earliest photo that my parents have of me with a horse is and I also came from a very non-horsey family. My dad kind of grew up as a farm kid, but didn't have horses. It was, an agricultural or crop farming family. My mom, her only exposure to horses was really through, a relative who she maybe saw a couple times a year. And so when I was probably 3 or 4 years old, my parents took my brother and I to a local Santa's village, and they happened to have pony rides. So there's this really cute photo of 3-year-old Annise with this really puffy, bright red jacket. And I had these pink mittens, and I just have the biggest smile on my face sitting on this fluffy chestnut pony. It's such a cute pony, too. And I even remember that first ride because I took my mittens off and tossed them away, like towards my mom, because I wanted to feel the reins in my hands. I need to dig that photo up from somewhere. But gosh, then I was totally all in on the horses. There was
I think
nothing
you went
else.
the 4-H route too, right?
Yeah, yep. So we eventually moved out into the country as a family, and my mom had always wanted to get horses, so I got my first pony. Her name is Ginger, as a Christmas present when I was 8 years old. And she was a red roan, and she had a bright red bow tied around her neck. It was so cute and magical. I'm so thankful to my parents for taking that on. I think if my dad had had any idea how much work horses were, he probably would have not been quite as supportive. But gosh, yeah. And then 4-H was such an amazing opportunity to be able to get involved, not just in the showing aspect, but other knowledge aspects. Like I was a horse knowledge bowl nerd. And if anybody out there watching is a horse knowledge bowl nerd, I say that purely out of endearment, and it's a good thing because you learn so much.
Wonderful. And for those who don't know, it means the 4-H's are head, heart, health, and hands. So it's really all about community. And I think a lot of people think of it as just kind of the livestock and the horses, but they have, gardening, they have photography, they have so many different ways you can get involved. And if I highly encourage people to reach out to it, because it was, I was sitting in meetings. I remember we used to have our our local chapter meetings, and we were, from the time I was probably 9 or 10, and I see how that has helped me now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's even so funny that you bring that up, because the only reason I know what parliamentary procedure is, or the way that I was introduced to it, was through 4-H club meetings. Yep. And now I have to run my own board meetings and have a knowledge of parliamentary procedure. And I made my first resume applying for a 4-H horse project competition called the Dan Patch Award, and was involved in hippology, so horse judging, doing equine focused tests, identifying different, attack and poisonous plants and parts of the horse. And so there's so many avenues to get involved. So my first trip to Kentucky was actually as a result of 4-H and competing in the Eastern National 4-H Horse Roundup, which is like the national competition for the 4-H Horse Project, which is held in Louisville, Kentucky each year. And so I went in, it was 2010 because it coincided with Breeders' Cup. And so my parents got me Breeders' Cup tickets as a Christmas present. And so I was able to go do my speech, which was about a racehorse, Ruffian, and then go to Breeders' Cup, which was so, so cool. So yeah, I totally agree with you. 4-H is an amazing, amazing program for youth to get involved in. Gosh, and then where to go from there. It was probably at that point that I was starting to get old enough to start working at the North Dakota Horse Park, which is the small track near my home. I became interested in racing after watching the movie Ruffian, which, note to anybody out there, if you haven't seen it, at least look up her story first. Google Ruffian so you're familiar with her story before you watch the movie, because it can be a bit startling. But I just fell completely in love with racing. And so I would have seen that prior to going to Eastern Nationals. Figuring out the sequence is a challenge now. And then learned that there was a racetrack near my family home, the North Dakota Horse Park. And I started volunteering there as a racetrack ambassador. It was so funny. So the track, this is actually a great idea.
Is it still there?
The track is still there. And awesome. But at the time, they had this off-the-track thoroughbred that they used as their track ambassador. So he would stand in a little pen at the entry gate so people could pet him as they would come in. And then I was like his official handler / ambassador, where I would talk about his racing career and talk about second careers for thoroughbred.
It's kind of like at the Kentucky Horse Park, how they have, some of the greats there that you can go up and meet. It's like these big, scary racehorses, but they're not. It's such a great way to introduce them to the public.
It was so funny. I mean, Barracuda Boy could come across as a big, scary racehorse. That was their mascot because he had this really weird thing where he liked having his gums rubbed. So he would come at you as if his teeth were bared, and you'd think that he was going to savage you, but he really wanted you to stick your hand in his mouth and rub his gums. Anyways, so
that could have been something from his racing days, because that's actually like a calming. So for people who don't know, that's why they do the lip chain, because having the pressure on their gums has like a calming kind of a sedative effect on them.
Yeah, thanks for making a note of that. Yeah, that's probably exactly what it is. He just wants his lip chain. So funny.
At what point did you think I could have a career in this and have it be, I'm trying to think how to phrase this, because I think a lot of people, or especially where I came from, where horse careers were not really a thing, it was very like, well, can you make money in that? Is that a real job? Do you get health benefits? All of these logistical adult questions, which you have to answer. And, at the time I was kind of like, I don't know. I'm just assuming that they have more out there than being a rider or a trainer. And, but it was definitely unknown territory, and it was totally different than going into, getting a corporate job or becoming a doctor, a lawyer, a nurse, an engineer, like everybody else in my family. So what made you take that leap?
It's a really good question. I think the main answer is that I just didn't think about any of the logistical questions, like salary, benefits, time off, didn't factor in at all into my decision making, which, looking back, advice for viewers, definitely consider those things. But after seeing Ruffian, I immediately thought I wanted to be a jockey. And I think that just goes along with, that's one of the careers that people think of. They think horse racing, jockey, or trainer, or veterinarian. They don't often see the whole scope of careers that are out there. And then when I was at the North Dakota Horse Park, the director of media relations sort of took me under his wing and got me started doing interviews. So that was how I got started doing my first interviews with Racing Connections.
Which is how I met you. You were on the notes team.
Yeah. So that I went down this whole communications and media route, and that led to internships with the American Quarter Horse Association in communications, and the Saratoga Special, writing for a horse racing newspaper, and then the Keeneland notes team and communications department. So those are all amazing experiences and unveiled all of these other careers that I wouldn't have considered. So honestly, I probably didn't really start considering, the what you need to live kind of questions, salary, benefits, all of that, until quite a bit farther down the road, when I was well into living in Kentucky, pursuing that career, that sort of came up. And those are definitely important things, and I would never overshadow that. But I really do think there's something to be said for having a career that fulfills you and that you enjoy. And, I have friends who have jobs that they have an incredible paycheck and they have a miserable working life, and they have no work-life balance, and their work cannot compensate for the paycheck that they're making doesn't make up for the fact that they really don't enjoy their jobs. And I can say that I love my job. I love the people that I work with. I love the fact that we're now doing a podcast together. But that's a really, really good question.
I came across this quote on Instagram and I loved it so much that I made a poster out of it in Canva and got it ordered really, really large to put somewhere in my home. And it says, it's something to the effect of, life is great when you start waking up with passion and going to bed with gratitude.
I love that.
And that to me is everything, right? And it's exactly what you're describing. Are there times I wish I could make more money, especially because I have an expensive hobby? And would I be able to make more money in a corporate role? Perhaps, but would that be the purpose? Like, would I be living out my purpose in what I know I'm meant to be in and around? Or would I just be sitting in a cubicle, because I've done that before, and wishing I were outside with horses, getting to go to the shows or getting to go to the races? I mean, I remember the first time that when I took the job with GSS, well, I guess actually even with WinStar, when I went to work at the office there and I got to go outside. I remember like my first foaling season, and I was like, oh my God, I get to go outside and see baby horses. This is the life. This is the dream, right?
That's amazing.
So I think it's all about creating the life that you envision for yourself. And, for some people, that does mean keeping work and your passions or your hobbies like very separate. But I do think that it's becoming more common to try to find a way to merge those or blend those in some way, or at the very least, have a positive, engaging working environment, even if it's not necessarily something that you're passionate or, my fiance, for example, is a chemical engineer. I would say, he's not, I don't think he goes to bed like dreaming of chemistry, and is like wakes up excited to do it every single day, and did it as a little kid. I mean, maybe a little bit, but but he is in a work environment that he loves. And at the end of the day, I think that's so important.
Yeah. It's really interesting that you bring up gratitude. I've been having a lot of these moments lately where I've found myself in this really, really happy stage of my life. Like, I actually think I'm happier now than I've probably ever been in my entire life. And a lot of it has to do with reflecting more on gratitude for, the fact that I have a very fulfilling job. I live with my partner. We're long distance for 3.5 years. He's now moved to Lexington, Kentucky, which is amazing. I have several hobbies that I love, including polo, which we've talked a lot about, and this incredible friend group and incredible work colleagues that I've surrounded myself with. And we've talked about this on other episodes before, but exactly what you've just reflected on, the importance of surrounding yourself with good people. and being around people that you admire and look up to and that make you a better person and that you feel good being around, I think is so, so important. So
truly. And I think that's why we've always stayed connected as we've moved throughout our careers. And it's interesting. I remember, or I kind of see it now. I remember, you know, my grandfather told me there will come times in your career where you finally, it's like climbing stairs. At one point you reach a spot, you know, kind of like a landing spot, and you're able to look back and reflect and think like, wow, I've come so far, I've made it. And then the next phase of growth begins. And I feel like that's where I am now.
Wow, I love that.
I'm so great. I've been having, you know, similar thoughts. I mean, I've got now 2 happy horses, which is a little stressful financially. But you know, I've got a wonderful agency. I absolutely love the people that I work with on a daily basis. And now it's like, okay, we're pushing for the new level of growth within the agency and within myself personally as a leader and a thought leader and a businesswoman. So I totally get that. And I'm so happy, you know. Annise, talk a little bit though about how you got to the point where you're now at this spot, because I can't even imagine how difficult, and I've always wondered this myself, how did you take Amplify from just this like idea to what it is today? Because it's incredible what you've done with it. And there have been so many other racing organizations, so many well-meaning, you know, committees and things that have like popped up throughout our decade or so now in the industry. They eventually lose steam, and you know, it's really unfortunate. But I mean, Amplify is just like, I remember there was a period, you know, maybe before we started the podcast, but it was like every time I turned around, you know, Annise was doing something else. Amplify was partnering with somebody else.
Gosh, taking people back to, you know, how Amplify first came about, I think that, you know, mine and your stories aren't unique to the broader horse racing community, and that we were 2 young people who kind of randomly got connected to racing. We weren't from Kentucky. We weren't directly exposed to racing through our upbringing or where we lived necessarily, but we had this passion and this interest, and the thoroughbred industry presented a lot of opportunity. So then the next step is how do you actually go about getting involved and meeting people and making connections and figuring out what the appropriate attire is to wear to the sales, or what the job is going to be that you're going to do once you move to the place. So I think
how the benefits, how the logistics of it are going to work.
Exactly. Like making sure that people are considering those real life questions. So I think that was a big motivating factor. My co-founder, Madison Scott, she kind of is my Madison. She is originally from Austin, Texas. And so in 2019, when I was currently on the Godolphin Flying Start program, she's a graduate of that program, we had started doing a lot of brainstorming in and around. That was a kind of a dark or negative time in racing. There were a lot of breakdowns happening at Santa Anita. So it was bringing a lot of, equine welfare. A lot of equine welfare questions to the table. And it kind of started with us just sitting around and asking, like, what can we do for young people to make a difference and like motivate our fellow young, passionate people in the industry to do something. And so we really started with, you know, how can we motivate young people to help in some way, shape, or form? And then as it's evolved, and when I was on Flying Start, I had to create a business plan. That's your capstone project for those 2 years, is creating a business plan of sorts. And you go through a extensive process of customer discovery and researching what problem you want to solve and, you know, what are the challenges behind it. So that's where Amplify kind of came around, or I should say, what are the challenges that are really connected to that problem, and some ways that people are currently solving it or getting around them. So that's where Amplify came to this point of being more of a youth organization. We want to be the first step or first introductory organization to get youth and young adults involved in the thoroughbred industry, regardless of where they're from around the country, where they're based, what their equine experience is, or how easy it is for them to access even touching a horse, and then outlining those pathways and creating entry points through things like mentorship or a podcast and a website and behind the scenes events. So it's been a journey. It's really had its ups and downs. I've learned with Amplify. I've stumbled at times. There have been a lot of tears along the way, as there are probably with starting any new organization. But I had a great group of people through our board members and early supporters to really help Amplify grow. We were incubated for 2 years under the KEEP Foundation, so the Kentucky Equine Education Project Foundation. And then, since then, we've had some amazing industry supporters step up and fund us and help us develop our programming. And right now we're in a stage where we're about to launch a Amplify Impact campaign. So looking at how we've grown and now what these next several years are going to look like, and how we continue Amplify nationally and growing. So it has certainly, there are some days when I'm so frustrated because there's something that I have to do that might be really simple to somebody else, but because I'm having to learn it as I do it, things as simple as, bookkeeping and accounting and working with the IRS on nonprofit, reporting duties, and how you create fundraising materials and, make connections with donors and stay in contact with mentees, like any and all of those things, I've had to learn along the way. So it's been an amazing opportunity for me to create something that now is hopefully going to help share the opportunities of the thoroughbred industry with a broader group of young people. But it's also been an amazing opportunity for me to grow. So yeah, great times. And I actually wanted to bring things back to, you mentioned that when you came to Kentucky, you sort of got out of horses for a little while. And how, at what point in your career did you start feeling comfortable to be allocating more funds and budgeting more time to actually like making horses a hobby for yourself again, beyond your job?
Yeah. It took quite a while, to be honest, because I knew that if I was going to have my own horse, I was going to do it right. In knowing how competitive I am, knowing what my goals would be, as much as I love hacking out and trail riding, I knew I wanted a nice horse that could compete, that I could, work on goals with, and I knew that was going to take money. So I would say all through my 20s, because student loans are also like a very real thing, which they are for, I'm sure, a lot of people. And throughout my 20s, I would try to ride whatever I could through whoever I could. I met some wonderful people in Lexington who introduced me to the hunters, and they let me ride. They were girls around my age, and they would let me ride their horses. And it was really the first time I'd ever ridden English or jumped. And anytime that anybody said, "Oh, we're going on a trail ride," or I have, an extra saddle or something, I would take the chance and say, "Oh yeah, I can do that. I know how to ride English, like no big deal." and it evolved from there. But I would say it wasn't until, COVID, when things were slowing down, because I was also traveling so much at the time. from 2017 to 2019, I was on the road because that was my job. We were traveling constantly with Breeders' Cup and working with NBC. So I wasn't home a lot. And 2020, when things slowed down a bit, and I'd been thinking of it for a while. I'd kept my eye on new vocations and whatnot. So when things did slow down, and it's all about opportunities unfolding in front of you, right? I'm not a very patient person, so it's difficult for me to wait for those opportunities to unfold. But fortunately, they have come my way and on a pretty good timeline. So when the opportunity to actually rent a small apartment on a hunter jumper farm here in Houston, of all places, came available, I was able to work something out where, my rent and my board was together.
Wow. I never knew this.
And
wow.
that's when I said, all right, I'm going to take the leap, and started seeing what new vocations had on the website. And yeah, that's where Charles came from.
Wow. That's so cool. And again, that gets back to those, those life questions that you have to ask yourself about, pay, salary, time off, work-life balance,
Right.
and having hobbies is really, really important. And I've seen friends in this industry who, their work is their hobby. Like that's what they want to do all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I really do think that it's healthy to have other hobbies, even if it's still equine related.
I kind of do that, but in a healthy way.
Yeah, exactly. It's like having a different discipline, a slightly different interest, right, but then being really intentional about how can you make sure that does work, because horses can be very expensive. They're really fun. I really do think that everybody can enjoy horses in some way, shape, or form. But it's being intentional about how you do that and how you
absolutely
and how you can add that into your life. So that's so cool. What a unique situation.
Yes. And to speak to the intention of it, maybe I'm a little woo-woo, but I do believe that, opportunities come to those who seek after them. And so before I was even living on my own pre-COVID, I made a vision board. I had moved back to Texas at the time, and I was staying with family, and I made a vision board, and it was all about Houston and horses and hunter jumpers specifically, which was still very new to me. I mean, I've really only been doing the hunter jumpers for about 5 years. And yeah, sure enough, the vision board, it's still there in my room. But, to be intentional. And I think that's partly how we have ended up where we are, which not saying we're at the end all be all, but we've at least found a place in our career where we're somewhat comfortable and stable and successful. And it's been a lot of, tears and worried nights, and we'll continue to have those as we grow. But it's being intentional about where you want to be in your life. So having this vision for your life I knew what my vision was, right? To be a successful leader. Businesswoman was not exactly on my radar. I thought a successful professional for sure. I did not realize that I would become like an entrepreneur and actually run a company. And then, like I said, spending time with the horses, around the horses, marketing and communicating every day about something that I'm passionate about, that I enjoy talking about. And so, yeah, just looking at, okay, well, when I'm 30, where do I want to be? What do I want my life to look like? When I'm 32, when I'm 35, and things don't always come on the timeline that you expect. Sometimes I wish that I'm turning 35 and I wish I were where I am now 5 years ago, but it's life. And like I said, the opportunities unfold as they come. So yeah, I think being intentionality and having gratitude are huge in shaping the life that you want.
What was your progression like within GSS internally? Because I mean, I remember when you started with GSS, but what was that like for you from when you started and you didn't initially think that you wanted to be a businesswoman? When did that change? And have you had a vision for like getting to where you are now, or did it just kind of happen naturally in how you progressed and moved up within the organization?
It's such a great question. So it was a leap, and I mean, it's so crazy. I remember everything so clearly, how it happened when I joined Grand Slam, what is now GSS, the marketing agency, because I was working in a corporate job for a NetJets company. I was in that gray little cubicle. I had a great salary, great benefits, 8 to 5, and I would go after work. I was living in Cincinnati at this point, and I would go after work and I would drive and I would take a lesson on like a partially leased horse, and 3 times a week, and that was that. And then the opportunity to become GSS's first full-time hire. They'd been in business for about a year. We're ready for their first full-time hire, came up, and I was asked to interview for the position. And I, I got the offer, and I mean, making the decision, it was like the most exhilarating but scary thing, because I knew what I was leaving behind, right? Like, keep progressing on this corporate path or kind of navigate my own within this small agency. And from the time I came in, I definitely saw myself being a leader within it. I just didn't see myself, I never saw myself as, doing all of the accounting and the finances. That I specifically in college avoided the accounting classes. So, I've had to pick it up as I go. So that's why that wasn't really in my vision. But I knew that I wanted to be able to use my position to influence the racing industry for good, and to develop a great company. And so I did always kind of have my eyes, from the moment I came in, I had my eyes set on a leadership role. And then, just kept progressing and helping to get new business and helping to expand the brand with Molly and Shona. And then when they stepped away in 2020, they said, we're making you COO. And that was big news to me. And that was another huge turning point. It was like, okay, how is this going to go? I was obviously determined to be successful, but I had never been a COO before. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know how to get it done. Same as you describing doing all of these things for the first time. But I took the leap. And then after 4 years, here we are. We've been very successful, and we are going back to being a fully woman-owned agency, of which I'm the CEO and managing partner. And it's another huge, like, wow, okay, now I'm the CEO, now I'm running all of it. And it goes back to also the people around you, because Molly and Shona and everybody, all of our, employees, and they've just been, they're the people that have always been on my team rooting for me, even when I didn't know that I could do something. They believed in me being COO to put me in that position. And so, yeah, it goes back to the people around you. And yeah, I really hope, I mean, my goal is to continue creating a powerhouse agency that is number one, not only in horse racing, but in equine sports marketing as well.
That is so cool. It's amazing. I have 2 great friends who, I mean, I guess my title is executive director, but sometimes that imposter syndrome still makes me feel like I'm just kind of like playing adults. But I have 2 great friends, in you and Hallie Hardy, who are very young female executives. And I think we're seeing this larger and larger pool of young women executives in this industry. And I think that's so cool. And I'm so proud of you guys. And I've been really, really proud of my friend group in general to see each of them grow professionally within each of their roles. And I think both of us probably experience this a lot, that we look around at our friends and see them as, you know, future industry leaders or even current industry leaders that we can all look to for help and advice and support. So I think that's so cool that we've got this awesome network and can all kind of push each other along in a really positive way.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely. Yeah. Look at it like Horse Racing Women's Summit, you know,
yeah.
And I think one of the things that's so wonderful about it, like with Amplify and Women's Summit, and that might be a little different from the past 10 years, is there are so many avenues now to encourage new people to get involved and to become educated and to see that this is a viable career choice that can work for them and can give them a very fulfilling life.
So all of that is totally awesome. And it's really cool to see your progression and hear about all these opportunities for women and newcomers in the industry in general. And, you know, on the note of GSS, the marketing agency, and cool opportunities, people will actually have a chance to potentially meet you in person coming up. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So everybody, I will be attending the American Horse Publications Media Conference in Lexington, which is May 16th through 18th. It's at the Hilton downtown this year. So right in the heart of Lexington. And I'm really excited. So we are actually going to be giving 2 separate presentations. So we're going to do one on Friday, myself and a few team members, and it's going to be called Marketing for the Modern Equestrian Industry. So we're going to delve into crafting holistic marketing strategies, you know, talking about the power of integrated and content marketing, social media, creating compelling content, important and impactful activations. And yeah, we're really excited about that. I think it's going to be exciting because, you know, another evolution with Grand Slam Social has been, we started out as social based, but now we're really doing full content marketing strategies and rebrandings and developing strategies that cross and connect all of the elements of marketing that you need to run a successful organization in this day and age. And then Saturday, I'll be doing Elevating Your Game. So that will be high impact insights for business success. So I mentioned I've learned a lot over the past 4 years about running a business and an equestrian business. And so myself, along with Kelly Gordano, who is a business consultant of mine from her company is called Avenue Equestrian. She used to work for IBM, all of the big places in Manhattan consulting. And similar to us, the horses brought her back to the horse world. So we're going to be talking about exploring, you know, leadership, building a team, brand building tactics, innovative marketing approaches, and driving business growth. So yeah, if you're reach out to me on Instagram or email me, Kaitlin@gsstheagency.com. Let me know if you'd like to meet up.
I'm so bummed to be missing it. I've only been to the American Horse Publications Conference once. It was several years ago. It was 2017, actually. I will be at Preakness. We'll be rocking and rolling with some really cool projects there. But 2 of Amplify's team. Yeah, exactly. Next year, fingers crossed. But 2 of Amplify's team members, Katie and Mary Courtney, will both be there. So anybody out there watching, you can meet Katie Collardo or Mary Courtney Combs, and they will tell you all about Amplify. And I'm excited to have those 2 sit on your presentations, and so much cool stuff coming up. It's crazy.
Yes. I'll also be at Saratoga or Belmont in Saratoga. So
amazing.
That will be a very historic event.
I'm so excited for you to be going to that. We're doing some really cool kind of the space that we want to get more into with Amplify is helping existing organizations amplify their educational outreach.
Mm-hmm.
And so I, at Preakness, will be working with a local youth organization to facilitate an experience for them. And then I'll be venturing to Illinois in June to work with the Illinois Thoroughbred Horsemen's Association on their educational outreach. Yeah, so those are some really fun things. But
I love that you're getting into different states too. So next we've got to brainstorm how we can get you in Texas. We can get Amplify to Texas.
Yes. I really enjoyed my visit to Fort Worth for the American Youth Horse Council Symposium. So it'd be great to be able to do more youth engagement there and programming. But lots of exciting things ahead for both of us. And I really enjoyed this episode, Kaitlin. Thank you so much. And good luck at AHP.
Thank you. I will miss you, but yes, see you soon.
See you soon.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Amplify Horse Racing Podcast. Please subscribe and leave a rating or review on your podcast listening platform of choice to help more people find us.
If you have questions or an episode idea, contact us at info@amplifyhorseracing.org. You can watch the video version of this episode on YouTube and follow Amplify on social media at Amplify Horse Racing on Instagram and Facebook and at Amplify Racing on Twitter. Go Amplify, go horse racing, and go you. Catch you next time.